have an email here from CW. This is good. It's a dog man. I think it's a possible dog man encounter. I was born and raised in the piney woods of deep East Texas. Growing up and learning to hunt in East Texas would help me hone my hunting skills in other areas of the country. I've always said if you learn to hunt in East Texas, anywhere else would be like hunting in a zoo. I would grow up to hunt all over the state, and I found that the hill country located just north of the desolate South Texas region would turn out to be my favorite destination. At the time of this event, I was and still am an active LE officer for a large and well-known agency in the state of Texas. I've had an interesting career over the past 30 years, and I've formed a well-respected reputation among my supervisors and peers in this community. I'm planning to retire soon, but I have plans to enter another venture that still involves the law enforcement community, and I'm not willing to damage my reputation at this time by giving my real name. In the summer of 1998, I was at my deer lease located just outside of Vance, Texas. Now, Vance is no more than a name of the area. It's no longer a true town, and it's in a rural area, surrounded only by large ranches and agriculture. The population of deer by far exceeds the number of people and livestock in the area. There are abundant white-tailed deer and axis deer, as well as wild pigs and turkey. There's also the occasional escaped animal from a nearby game ranch that would require some research to identify. This area is a hunter's paradise. The property was several thousand acres of beautiful land that had river bottom, large hills and meadows, and thick cedar cover that was always full of critters to hunt. One of the property lines bordered the Nueces River, and we're blessed to be able to hunt the river bottom there. Large cedar-filled hills and all the thicket-filled ravines and dry creek beds. I don't know if I pronounced the name of that river correctly, but that looks like I think I got it right. Nueces, I'm not sure. So everybody correct me in the comments. There were also supposed to be caves in the hills, but we were never able to locate any of the larger ones, only a few small caverns full of bats. Bert, my partner of many years at work, jumped at the opportunity to get on this hunting lease with me after several invites, and him getting to see firsthand what an absolute paradise this property is. He and I would travel to our lease several times a year to check and fill all the deer feeders and check the camp house, and just get away from work and the stresses that came with it. On one occasion, Bert and I even located a makeshift meth lab in our woods, and it was occupied by two dumbass meth monkeys who were trying to hide behind cedar brush with bright clothing. Needless to say, they were quickly arrested, and we held them until the local sheriff could come haul them away and safely gather the evidence for later use in their trial. Being in the line of business that we were in, you don't go anywhere without a sidearm. It's just a habit, like always having your wallet. We would feel naked without it. During the summer of this event, Bert and I split up to check corn levels in the 21 feeders we had placed on this property. While checking the last feeder in my areas, I noticed an old grown-up roadbed that continued up the hill and then along the rocky ridge of one of those hills. Getting up this unkept road was no small feat due to the incline and the rocks, but I scrambled to the top of the hill anyway. I then followed the ridge running over the cedar and mountain laurel that was overtaking the old road. I parked and then crept down the rocky path on foot in an attempt to be as quiet as possible, and I found that there was an old dilapidated deer stand 150 yards up the side of the hill, and it overlooked the basin that was full of scrub oaks. I could see that there were game trails that twisted and turned all throughout the area. Now this was a choke point with multiple trails converging to this area. There was deer sign everywhere, and I figured that this would be the perfect area for a new deer stand location. I left the area and returned to camp, and after explaining what I had seen, he didn't even ask to see the location first. He just asked what we needed to make the long trip with the stand. So the next day we loaded up his side-by-side and my four-wheeler, and we began the long, slow trip to set up the stand. We were excited to have a new bow stand to hunt in the upcoming season. Well, archery season soon arrived, and I left camp bright and early for the long four-wheeler ride and then the long walk to the new stand. I quietly climbed in the tripod and I got settled in. I then closed my eyes and waited for the sun to begin to rise and provide the warm light so that I could see the area and hopefully bag a big buck. As the sun began to rise, I remember hearing the birds chirping their morning songs, and I could hear small rocks falling in the hills in the densely covered dry creek ravine as animals were beginning to stir. In the distance, I remember hearing an axis buck bugle. Their bugle can be described as a cross between an elk bugle and a woman screaming. They also bark to communicate. It's a distinct sound, and once you've heard it, you'll never forget it. It was still twilight and hard to see, but my ears were in tune with my surroundings, and what I heard next, I will never forget as long as I live. As I was sitting there quietly listening, I heard the most god-awful scream that came from the ravine that was just to my right. The sound came from 50 yards away, and I had goosebumps on top of goosebumps. Now there was no way that this call was that of an axis buck, nor was it the call of any other animal that I had ever heard before. I sat petrified with nothing but a bow and arrow nocked and ready. It seemed like an eternity as I squinted to see through the brush and dark shadows to try to see what had just made that evil sound. I heard another axis buck bugle in the distance. It was maybe a half mile away. The area had become eerily silent, other than that of my heart pounding in my chest. I slowed my breathing and gripped my bow, and I slowly got into position to be able to make an offensive strike. I began replaying that sound in my mind in comparison to the other deer calls I had heard, and there was no way on earth it was a deer call. I could hear small rocks falling, as if something was climbing up and out of the far side of this rocky, dry creek bed. And I saw an extremely large black and brown mass moving in the thick cedar brush across from the ravine. I strained my eyes to see what it was, and just as I did, I could see this thing turn its head and look at me as if it knew I were there the entire time. My blood ran cold, and then it turned and crept through the underbrush until it was out of sight. I remembered I had my .40 cal pistol on my hip, and I drew it and frantically scanned the area that I had last seen this creature. What I saw will haunt me, but I have not and will not ever repeat this story again. The creature that looked at me had canine features with a short, powerful-looking muzzle and short, pointed, sharply crisp-looking ears that pointed up and back. The height of the creature would be hard to determine due to the fact that it was hunched over as it crept through the cedars. However, the width of this creature would dwarf that of even the largest NFL lineman. It had to have been 3.5 to 4 foot wide, and I'm guessing it weighed in at 600 or 700 pounds. I slowly and quietly climbed out of the deer stand and began to cautiously make my retreat back down the trail and up the unkempt road back to my four-wheeler. When I returned to camp, in record time I might add, Bert had a million questions about how many deer I had seen and how wonderful a hunt I must have had in this new location. I merely told him that it wasn't a good spot and that I would not hunt it again, and I advised him not to waste his time hunting there either. I told him that it was not worth the trip. We still hunted that land for many years to follow, but I would only return to that spot once to retrieve my deer stand and deer feeder. I had a lot of help when we returned, and I made sure we were all well armed. I still hunt and fish, and I explore new woods and waterways, but I'm always well armed. And now you know why I haven't shared the details of this event with anyone. I don't care if anyone believes me. I know what I saw, and that is proof enough for me. But I would never want to take a chance in jeopardizing my career and retirement. That would jeopardize my family, and I could not and would not allow that to happen, ever. On a side note, during the summer before the season, we had a visit from a younger federal game warden to our camp. He was a nice enough fellow, and he had advised us that they were putting cyanide traps out for coyotes. Well, we quickly informed him that there were no coyotes in the area anymore due to the bounty that had been placed on them many years ago. They were all but hunted to extinction in this area, and we had never even heard coyotes at night. The many years that my family, friends, and I had hunted these woods, we had never seen or heard signs of a coyote, even on our bone piles where we discarded the unused portion of deer and hog carcasses that we had taken and cleaned. But on the back fence line, where we had put the new tripod stand, Bert and I could see the brightly marked danger markers. When we initially put the stand up, we walked over to look at these markers, and we found that they warned of the risk of cyanide poisoning. We could also see the M44 canister traps placed in small dugout holes, and we could see that they were set and had been baited. The bait appeared to be pig legs and hindquarters, probably from roadkill or pigs caught in a trap that no one wanted. I never gave it much thought when I saw these traps, but after seeing what I have seen and after hearing the many stories on your channel, it now makes sense. I believe that the government agency that is in charge of controlling these matters knew of this creature's location, and they were in fact trying to kill it. I hope they did. And had I seen that thing again while armed with more than a bow and arrow or a small caliber pistol, I would have dispatched that evil-looking thing without blinking an eye. I heard the theory about the timber industry and how acknowledging the existence of these creatures might negatively affect this industry with ridiculous rules and regulations to protect them. I tend to agree with this theory. It just makes sense. I do not hunt this property anymore, but I miss it, and part of me wishes to return to try to hunt this creature. Thanks for providing the opportunity to finally get this off my chest. I enjoy listening to your story so much that I keep it on all the time. Thank you, sir. It is definitely a lot better than listening to the news that always seems to get my blood pressure worked up. Your voice is kind and soothing, and it always calms me and puts me in a good mood. Keep up the good work, Bubba. Mr. CW, thank you for that, and I'm so thankful for you and people like you who listen to this channel. And I don't always do this, but I hope it goes unsaid how much I appreciate everyone who sends in these stories, especially stories like this, because I believe the way he wrote this and talking about his credentials and everything just fits into place. And he was saying that he saw canines and a muzzle. And I'm wondering if this could be a dog man or if it's one of these gugwees or is it just a standard Bigfoot? I don't know. Texas has hundreds of reports, especially East Texas and those swampy and lowland areas. But I think he said this was in Northwest Texas, which is a totally different topography. Close to the Nueces, Nueces River. I guess I'll have to look that up to see exactly where it is. But anyway, this was a great story, and I think it shook him up when he saw it, but he's ready to go back and hunt this thing and kill it if he ever gets a chance. And man, this guy is a stud. I appreciate that, and I think it'd be fun to hunt one of these dangerous animals. I'm not sure how well I would do with that, but I might give it a whirl. But anyway, one story in this podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.